Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillahi wa kafa, wa salamun ala ibadihi allazina istafa amma ba'd. Fa'auzu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Ya ayyatuhan nafsul mutma'innah, irji'i ila rabbiki radiyatan mardiya, fadkhuli fi ibadi, wadkhuli jannati. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun, wa salamun alal mursaleen. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala ali Sayyidina Muhammad wa barik wa sallim. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala ali Sayyidina Muhammad wa barik wa sallim. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala ali Sayyidina Muhammad wa barik wa sallim. Rabbi yassir wa la tuassir wa tammim bil khair wa bika nasta'een. Rabbi zidni ilma. Ya Fattah, Ya Fattah, Ya Fattah. So Alhamdulillah, by grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we are back in our weekly session. Alhamdulillah, in this blessed month of Sha'ban, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us an opportunity to be mindful of the things that we need to do to make the most of the extremely blessed month that is about to come upon us. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to live up to that month and enter in that month and make the most out of that month, the month of Ramadan. Sha'ban, one thing that has been very pleasantly surprising this time around is that in the masajid locally, not only in the last Jummah khutbah, but also, there's often a sermon after Isha as well, if I get a chance to listen to that. They have been highlighting the importance of Sha'ban, and they have been mentioning that this is the month to prepare for the month of Ramadan, which is very good, because this is something that in today's time is getting lost. We are so becoming indulgent in our day-to-day lives that we remember that this is April, or depending upon which company you work for, so that this is March and year end, or December and year end. We remember our year ends, and we remember that this is when all the finances and the audits have to be completed. But we forget that there are months which have a great importance from Allah's perspective as well. And they have great importance from, not because Allah needs anything out of those months, but because those months have been made for us to benefit from as an opportunity to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Rajab, Sha'ban, Ramadan, 3 months of extreme importance. Months where we get to prepare ourselves to achieve what is lying as a present in the month of Ramadan. The present in the month of Ramadan is the one who has made good out of his Ramadan. The month who has gained the most out of Ramadan has gained what present? Taqwa, right? The purpose of Ramadan is la'allakum tattaqoon, so that you may become a person of taqwa. Alhamdulillah, we have been doing this for many years, but this year around we used a slightly different approach. The approach was that if taqwa is the ultimate goal, then let's look at what gets in the way of achieving taqwa. And then when we started reflecting on it, we realized that what gets in the way of taqwa is basically nafs. So this time around, this is our now 4th session for this purpose. We have been exploiting or exploring the topic of nafs. That what exactly is nafs? What is nafs made up of? How is nafs different from our being? What is the difference between nafs and ruh? How does nafs play a role in making us a good person or a bad person? What makes nafs a bad thing? How to identify that the nafs is not in its proper place, it is uncontrolled. How can nafs lead us to a place where it can destroy us completely? Nafs leads to spiritual diseases. What is the impact of those spiritual diseases? What is the way of fixing nafs? The term we used for that was tazkiyah. And then we started exploring what does tazkiyah mean. What does tazkiyah lead to? Another term we introduced was falah, that the one who gets tazkiyah done gets falah. Falah was success. What kind of success? It's a success after which there is no failure. It's a respect after which there is no disrespect. It is the closeness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala after which there is no moving away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And all these three things come not in this dunya but in hereafter. So falah is in the hereafter, and attainment of falah, the work for falah, happens in this dunya. We looked at that where we also understood that what are the things that needs to be done to fix our nafs. We looked at 5 different options, that these are the things that once done, or if done, then that can help improve our nafs. We also looked at the fact that, and that was the last session that we had, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is very Rahim. Although if a child is born with disability, he remains with that disability in this dunya, and if we do not fix our nafs in this dunya, then in the hereafter we will live with that disability or that shortcoming. However, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is so Rahim, so Kareem, that even if we go into the hereafter in the state of Iman but with shortcomings, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala still has ways of doing tazkiyah, and that tazkiyah would happen and we will still be taken to Jannah. And we used the parable of hospital, and we looked at that just as there are different rooms in hospital and the treatments in hospital, how does the treatment in the hereafter happen for the person to be cured? And any one of you who listen to that topic would surely come to that logical conclusion that I do not want that treatment. I'm better off getting the treatment in this dunya, because that is absolutely unconceivable, unbearable. That's all that we have done so far. Today, inshallah, we'll talk about the 3 states of nafs. I've been alluding to that in our talks, that there are 3 states of nafs. Inshallah, today we will explore what are those 3 states, and how does one get from one to the next. But just as a recap, because we have few friends who were either in the very first session or were not in these sessions as well. So just as a recap, that what exactly is nafs, right? So nafs is us, our body. If the easiest way to understand is that when you're making the dough, when you're making the flour and putting water with it, and you put the salt with it, and you mix it all together, the eventual outcome that comes, the dough that comes, you can't separate the salt from it. Just like that, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was making our bodies, He introduced nafs into it, and that nafs is now part and parcel of us. So that's you can call it alter ego, you can call it your ego itself, you can call it, the easiest way to understand nafs is I. And that I is the core of every single wrong that we do. Because that I, when inflated and bloated, makes us put everything aside and us above it. And therefore, when we get angry that when I said this, why did you not this? What did he think of me that he said this? Doesn't he know who I am, that he talked to me like that? It was my plan and you ruined my plan. So everything is revolving around me and I. That I is the nafs, right? And that I, when it is left on its own, then it becomes so bloated and inflated that it just wants what it wants. It does not care of the consequences. It does not care whether it is right or wrong. In fact, it becomes so overburdening that it convinces you that the wrong is also right. So it will make the wrong look right by giving you argumentation which you can present to yourself and to others that would make the wrong look right as well, right? So a human is made up of both these aspects, this nafs and ruh. Nafs is us and ruh is attached to our body. Ruh, that's why even when we go to sleep, I haven't mentioned this so far, but check that when we are sleeping, our ruh leaves us, and Allah is the one who brings it back, if it is to be brought back. If it was to be brought back, it can just, remain disconnected as well. But our body stays with us, right? That it doesn't go anywhere. Ruh is something which the equation of ruh and nafs come into play with regards to our spiritual health. The stronger our ruh is, the better our spiritual health is. And the weaker our ruh is, the stronger our nafs is, the more spiritual diseases we will have. Ruh and nafs have a inversely proportional relationship with each other. They are inversely proportional to each other. A strong nafs means weak ruh. A strong ruh means weak nafs. The reason is because what makes ruh strong is hated by nafs, and what makes nafs strong is absolutely a killer for the ruh. So what the nafs wants is to do nothing. Nafs just wants to chill. That's what nafs wants. It just wants to relax. It just wants to eat when it wants to eat what it wants to eat, drink what it wants to drink when it wants to drink, sleep as long as it wants to sleep when it wants to sleep. It doesn't want to be confined. There's no order that it wants to be put on itself. That's what basically nafs is. We have given the example that it's like a 2-year-old. We'll talk about that in a short while. The ruh, on the other hand, ruh does not want that. However, the elevation of ruh. Another thing to understand is that nafs is here in the body itself. Ruh does not belong here, because ruh wasn't created for this dunya. Ruh belongs in the al-Ammarah. It belongs to Allah. So it wants to, the health of ruh, or a healthy ruh, is elevated ruh, right? So for it to be elevated, for it to get that elevation, it requires us to do something what is called mujahada, which is struggle. What is that mujahada? We offer prayers 5 times a day, one restriction. More mujahada, wake up for tahajjud, less sleep. More mujahada, do fasting, eat less. More mujahada, stay bawudu. More mujahada, control your gaze. More mujahada, control your tongue. More mujahada, think everybody better than yourself. More mujahada, start controlling, even start ignoring the things which are even doubtful, where you have some. So ruh requires mujahada. The more mujahada, the more your ruh elevates. And nafs, on the contrary, just wants everything on its own. So a human being is a mixture of good and bad, depending upon which part is dominant. A person whose nafs is completely dominant maybe would be considered as somebody who is, a very selfish person, very not so good a person. Whereas a person who's worked on his ruh would be considered as a good person, right? And this is unique to humans. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hasn't made this in other living creatures. Animals are animals. They are not to be determined whether good or bad. Angels are just purely good. It's the humans which have a mixture of good and bad in them, right? How does this good part of a person become dominant, and how does the bad part change to the good part, right? This basically happens when you start taming your nafs. One example that I gave of nafs was that it is like a wild horse. Just as a wild horse does not want to be tamed, you cannot go and just sit on a wild horse and start riding it. It will kill you. That's how powerful a horse is, that if it wants to finish you off, it can easily finish you off. But when you do, certain things, after a while that horse gets tamed, and then it becomes such a strong ally of yours that it is so perfectly tamed, it is so obedient to you now that it is even willing to give its own life for you, right? That's why the horses that go into war, they are warrior horses are a sight to behold. When they go in, you need to, you really admire that the courage, the valor with which they go in, and they know exactly what they are doing. It's not like, they don't have a sense of where we are going. They know very well that we are going into a fight, and they go and fight. It's likewise, the horses that are used for, use a bit less aggressive example for polo. The polo horses are very intelligent, strong horses. They know they are, just like sportsmen are competitive, they are competitive. They know that, if we give it an extra mile, we can get something done. So just as a wild horse gets tamed to become an extremely well trained horse, the nafs can also go from an extremely out of control nafs to a nafs which is a perfect obedient nafs, right? And in between there is another stage as well. That is the stage where you are here and there. You are like a pendulum. You're going in between. And these are the three stages of nafs. The first stage of nafs is called nafs al-Ammarah. Nafs al-Ammarah. This is the nafs that we have been talking about so far. The easiest thing to understand about this nafs is like a 2-year-old baby. The 2-year-old baby wants what it wants, where it wants, when it wants, right? You're in a mall, the baby says that, I want that ice cream. The mother says, no, bad throat, no ice cream, not the right temperature. He'll just sit on the floor, he'll start taking out of the shelves, start throwing them, he'll throw a tantrum. He won't care who's walking by, who's doing what, who's looking at him, what it is doing to the mother. He just wants that, he'll get it no matter what, right? And you give him the ice cream, after a while, he'll have half of the ice cream, throw it, and then he wants the next thing, right? So that's what your untamed nafs is, that it wants what it wants and where it wants and when it wants, right? So, but that does not mean that 2-year-old baby would stay like that forever. When the parents work on that baby's behavior, when they start, there are ways to control that behavior. When you start working on that baby's behavior does change, and that first baby can go on to become a very good human being. Similarly, nafs al-Ammarah can become a better nafs. But in terms of the signs of nafs al-Ammarah, just to recap, what are the signs that we have looked at? Like I said, that the first thing is that the I is very dominant in nafs al-Ammarah. Everything revolves around me and I, right? These are the only two people that nafs al-Ammarah cares about. That it has to be me, myself, and I, or the third person is also there. Me, myself, and I. Everything is around that. When shahwat is dominant, shahwat means desires. When the lust is dominant, and it can be lust for anything, lust for food, lust for women, lust for luxuries, lust for glory, anything. When the lust is dominant, all he looks after is to fulfill that desire. It's like, my Sheikh says, it's like, when you look at the goats, right, and जब बकरे को बहुत ज़्यादा होती तो ये नहीं फिक्र करता कि who is watching, and बस वो उसी वक्त, he gets on with it, right? So he doesn't care, he doesn't bother, right? So that's what it is. That's that person's mindset. He doesn't care about the consequences. With humans, we still may be shy enough to, or be careful about that who's looking or not, but we don't think of the consequences. At that time, the desire is so over-dominating that we just want to get it done, we just want to fulfill it, right? Similarly, if you are in rage, right, then that person just goes blind in rage. He doesn't care who is he talking to, what is the consequence of the actions I'm about to do. He'll just go ahead and say things, he'll just go on and do things, and then afterwards he'll be like, oh my God, what did I do, right? If at all. But it's like a blind person who is also hungry. He'll just start going around and fiddling around whatever he can, just because he is so overwhelmed by it, right? Similarly, when he wants to treat himself, he'll tell himself, "Ana rabbukumul a'la," that I am in control of everything. Let me spend on this. Let me spend on that. And in justification, it will go like, I need to be treated. I need to do good to myself. All the self-help books would come into play, and all the me time. It's me time. Be good to yourself, and all those justifications will come into play, right? And then when it's time to spend, he will then start budgeting. Spending in the path of Allah, or spending or helping somebody, would always be very heavy on it. Like, I've just spent. Look, zakat ke time pe, you'll be like, but I've already so much credit on me. I'm in debt to bank, debt to this. When it's to spend on yourself, everything is there. But when it's time to give in path of Allah, you are even more worried, right? When it's time to, one of the things which, given Farhan is sitting over here, one of the things that I took great pride in, and I'm sure so many of our friends as well at that time, was that we lived to give our lives for the sake of our country. This was our motivation growing up, that we want to be part of a force where we can sacrifice our lives for our country. But one thing which, when I came into civilian life, I was very shocked with, was that a lot of people would say, as soon as something is happening here, we are leaving, we are fleeing. So we are just getting out. I have nothing to do with it. So that's another thing, that you don't have any. There's no beyond me. There's no concept of wailer. The best wailer is that let me save me and myself, and that's what you would think of. In simple, you are an extremely selfish person. Selfish, self-oriented, self-focused, self-obsessed, right? All the attributes of self you can attach to. उर्दू में कहते हैं ना कि ज़रूरत पड़े तो खोते को भी बाप बना ले, और जब काम ना हो तो तू कौन थे मैं कौन, right? That's how this is all nafs ammara. And a dominant feature in nafs ammara, again, I'm saying all of this so that we reflect how much of it is in us. Not because you think, oh my, that friend of mine, a lot of these problems are there. I wish he was here to listen to this. He would have really benefited. Let me share the link once the links come up. It is not about that friend of yours. It's about us, right? Is this in me and not? And the dominant feature is that there is a lot of complaint. There is a lot of complaint. Complain not about others. Complain about, there's, or rather, complain reflected through being ungrateful. A person who has been given the best of health, the best of livings, he lives a very comfortable life, earns a very comfortable living, has beautiful kids, a happy family, a good home to stay, a good car to drive, well respected. Majority of the middle to upper class people, even a lot of low caste people, jahan pe you have respectful living. Go and ask them how's it going, you get an answer, not bad. Right? This answer, not bad, guzara ho raha hai, not bad, guzara ho raha hai. This answer is the biggest ungratefulness that we can express to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How can a person who is blessed with blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from head to toe come up and say, not bad? He should have been that, I cannot thank Allah enough. How can I thank someone who has given me a house with such comforts, a family with such love, a job with such respect? There's so much, a health which is, which keeps me fit. We find, and we should reflect on this, that we are often when we have to say something, whenever asked about something, unintentionally, our response is to say, what is the shortcoming in that thing? How was your trip? Yeah, it was good, but a bit tiring. Could have been better. Yeah. How did the match go? Oh, we won, but I didn't do that. Yeah. There is a difference between retrospection for improvement and saying things where you are just highlighting the things which didn't happen good. You reflect in Quran, you reflect in the stories of the Anbiya alayhi salam. One thing that you would repeatedly find is that if they were to recap anything of the past, they would only recap the good that has come out of it. Surah Yusuf is the perfect example for that. Yusuf alayhi salam went through so much from childhood till his mid-30s, some even says up beyond 40s, right? He went through one trial or tribulation after the other. In the end, when everything is fixed and his family is here, he just says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had done a great favor to me, has brought my parents back to me, and what the Shaytan did to dissuade my brothers from me, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala even removed that, and I'm connected with my brothers. Even when his brothers who wanted to kill him, for their action, he said that action was because of Shaytan, didn't put any blame on them as well. Nafs al-Ammarah makes us complain, highlights the goodness in us. And the reason that happens, it's also important to understand that. The reason that happens is because the most lethal weapon that Shaytan has, and the most potent weapon that Shaytan has in keeping people away from Allah is being ungrateful, nashukri. Shaytan promised to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that he will attack us from our front, from our backs, from our left, from our right. And he said that I will always get to those who would be ungrateful. He will get people off Sirat al-Mustaqim because of their ungratefulness. Ungratefulness is the biggest identifier for reflect on what we say things and how we say things. If you often find yourselves highlighting, Hajj is a perfect example. Person comes back from Hajj and then spends the next 3 months just talking about the shortcomings in Hajj. What is the Saudi government doing wrong? What is the Hajj committee doing wrong? What is this happening? What is that happening? It's all complaints. However, when you work on this nafs and the things that we spoke about, to fix the nafs was, number one, you start denying its desires. Of course, it requires some understanding that what are the things that I am tempted to. You deny those things to it. Number two, you load it with ibadat. You start putting load on your nafs. Remember, nafs does not like load. If you don't pray, start praying. If you start praying, start going to pray with Jamaat. If you pray with Jamaat, start going for Takbir-e-Ula. If you are doing all of that, start introducing the extra nawafil. If you started doing the sunnats and the nawafil, start introducing the pure nawafils like Ishraq, like Doha, like Awabin. You're doing all of that, introduce tahajjud, do tahajjud, introduce Quran, start learning, grind it. You grind your nafs for some time, becomes very good in a very short time. Number three, make a lot of dua. The nafs does not get cured on its own. It needs help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allahumma aati nafsi taqwaha. Allah, please give taqwa to my nafs. Allah, please give taqwa to my nafs. Then number four, you can do all of these things on your own, but the nafs is, if you are smart, nafs is twice as smart as you, because nafs know you better than you know it, right? So what the nafs would do is that it would start deceiving you the other way around. Now it would start telling you that, look how good you have become. There's no one better than you. Sab kuch chhod diya. Bas sab to sirf Allah hi Allah hai. It would make you fall in love with you, right? And hence you can't effectively treat nafs all on your own. And you need to have a teacher. You need to have a life coach, which in reality is called a sheikh, right? So life coach for all those who can't digest the word sheikh, but yeah, millennials. नहीं जी, millennials का मसला नहीं है ये. Boomers से लेके Gen Z सबका ही मसला. So you need to have a sheikh. You need to have somebody whom you hand yourself over to, and that person, allow that person to then, to treat you, to fix you, to help you, right? And then of course there are two other things that we talked about, and one was to look at and to learn or to reflect from the things that those who envy us, those who are against us, what they say about us, and look for that if they are being allowed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to say these things about us, then there may be something true in it that Allah wants to fix in me, or do sabr. And the third and the last thing was that learn from the mistakes of others and then not do the same things ourselves. When we start doing these things, the nafs starts getting curtailed. The nafs is no longer tamed, is no longer untamed. Another thing that is also, I haven't spoken about it as much, but I think today is the time, is that one thing that really helps curb the nafs is depriving it of food. Food. Bhuka rehna. Nafs, the ted bhara hona. So nafs is on another level. Again, horse is a very perfect example. When you want to tame a horse, one thing that you do is that you give it less food. And after a while, when it's hungry, it allows you to, start putting a leash on it or saddle on it as well. But likewise, when a person is hungry, it is less aggressive. Not when you're starving. Starving can also make you aggressive, but but when you are not 100% fed. That's why, if you reflect on the Sunnah of eating, there's a lot of emphasis of leaving space, not eating to your full. One thing that's said about nafs is that when Allah created nafs, He asked for nafs to be brought to Him, and He said, "Who am I?" Right? So He said, "You are you and I am I." Right? Ana vantanta. You are you and I am I. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that, okay, send it into fire. And it was sent into fire, and it was kept in fire for a very long time. And then it was brought back, and Allah said, "Who are you?" He said, Ana vantanta. I'm I and you are you. So Allah sent it to another place. I don't know if you know this or not, but in hell, there is a place which is very cold as well. So mostly we think of hell as something which is fire, but in hell there's a place which is also very cold. And there's actually dua that, Ya Allah, save me for the cold portion of the hell as well. So it was sent to a place which was very, very freezing. And it was kept frozen for a long time. It was brought back. And I said that, who am I? He said, Ana vantanta. I am I and you are you. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, okay, isko starve it. And it was kept like that for a long time, and then it was brought, and he said that, question was asked, he said, Ya Allah, you're my Rabb, and I am your Abd. So that starving the nafs plays a lot of role. And that is why, if you think about it, the month of fasting, which has been said that it is there for لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, has this one thing that month of fasting does, is that it makes you stay hungry for a long period of time. Although, and that's a halal thing to do. There's nothing haram in eating, as long as you're eating the halal thing. But the purpose of Ramadan is that it helps you pull back on your nafs. Ramadan is full of things that was mujahada. सारा दिन भूखा रहो, रात को क़याम करो, फिर सहरी के लिए उठ जाओ, less sleep, more ibadat, less food. the three things that I talked about, that's what Ramadan is intense. That's boot camp, right? That's what it is. So Sha'ban is also a month where we should fast a lot. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha said that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not fast the entire month except in Ramadan, and then after that he fasted the most in Sha'ban. And Sahaba says that at times Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam fasted so much in Sha'ban that we felt that he would fast all the way into Ramadan, right? So fasting in Sha'ban is highly recommended. Right now we are on 12th of Sha'ban. Tomorrow is 13th of Sha'ban, 14th of Sha'ban, then 15th of Sha'ban. These are Ayyamul Bid. These are, in any case, the days which are recommended for fasting by Sunnah. In between comes Thursday as well, another day recommended by Sunnah for fasting. In between comes Monday, and then after that comes Monday as well. If you're flying, don't fast. But other than that, for those of us who live on the ground, try to fast. Right, fast on these days. And this fasting, and fast with, a lot of people come and ask that, after the 15th of Sha'ban, the night of 15th of Sha'ban, that, should we fast now? Is it recommended to fast on Shab-e Barat? The ideal thing to do is to fast 13th, 14th, 15th. Then there is no confusion, because that's absolutely 100% Sunnah. Rasulullah said that in this month, the deeds are presented to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and I prefer that when my deeds are presented, I am in the state of fasting, right? So it's highly recommended to fast at least in the coming 3 days. So from tomorrow, starting from tomorrow, Alhamdulillah, you guys have done your sahri. So nothing to worry about, and so now you can fast without any worry. But with fasting, and also in the month of Ramadan, with fasting, try to understand the concept of fasting is to deprive yourself of the usual amount of eating that basically satiates you. Do not eat as much, eat less. Deprive your nafs of that eating. Our concept of Ramadan is just the opposite. It's amazing that we say that, I've gained 2-3 kgs after Ramadan. Because, we think that, whatever, if I've not eaten for 9-10 hours, I must make up for every minute of not eating. So we eat from iftar. There are sahur camps, right? So there you go, and lavish buffets are over there. Don't do that, right? When we work on our nafs with all these things that I spoke about, nafs becomes a bit tamed. And this stage of nafs is called nafs al-Lawwama, right? This is called nafs al-Lawwama. Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam, Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam mentioned nafs al-Ammarah, and then after that comes nafs al-Lawwama. What is nafs al-Lawwama? Nafs al-Lawwama is a state of nafs where you are wanting to be a good person. You are mindful of right and wrong. You want to do right, but every now and then, but the temptations are still there, and you slip against those temptations as well. And then when you slip, instantly you become regretful, and then you want to come back. So Lawwama is basically a nafs which does malamat. Malamat means that it's, what's the right word for malamat? It has remorse, it has regret. Yeah, right? That it has remorse, it has regret. You feel that, oh, I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have done that. Then you want to seek forgiveness from Allah Ta'ala. You want to, you feel bad that, I shouldn't have done that. You feel guilty that why did I end up doing it? And majority of us, Alhamdulillah, are in that state. When you have Iman, one thing that Iman, because Iman itself brings some nur. What Iman does, unless you are outright munafiq, na'uzubillah, what Iman does is that it brings some nur, and that nur keeps on pulling ourselves towards Nafs al-Lawwama. Nafs al-Lawwama is another way of understanding Nafs al-Lawwama is that when you are in an environment where there's goodness, you feel very warm and you're like very motivated. When you walk out, now that heater or that fire isn't there, so now you are feeling cold. Another example is that you basically there was a fire that was being kindled and you were sitting around that fire, you were about to go out, you said that, okay, I have this lamp with me, you lit that lamp or oil lamp with you, and now you came out, and as soon as the wind blew, that lamp went out itself. So you do not have the power to keep that light or sustain that light. मस्जिद में बैठे होंगे तो खूब गिरगिरा के रोएंगे, दुआएं मांगेंगे अल्लाह से, और लगेगा कि इससे बड़ा कोई वली है ही नहीं. मस्जिद से बाहर आएंगे, सामने से कोई चलता हुआ जा रहा होगा, you get locked on and then all the way उनको घर छोड़ के आएंगे, like you have no control over your eyes, right? So this is the state of Nafs al-Lawwama. And then as soon as they are out of sight, you're like, oh my God, I shouldn't have done that, right? Now, why does that happen, right? Why does it happen that, why do we end up doing, why can't our nafs stay in a good state? Why does it slip? And the biggest reason for that is that nafs is one thing, and then there is another enemy. And that enemy is Shaytan. And if you recall from our previous talks, nafs is an actual an ally of Shaytan. Right? Nafs is the CID, Shaitan is the external enemy. Nafs is the enemy within. Right? It's the enemy within. And now what you're doing effectively is basically making him a double agent. Right now he was a party to Shaitan, and now you're turning him and making him favorable to you. But Shaitan still has context with it. Right? And when Shaitan sees that this thing is going now, it comes and starts attacking it. But there is a difference in Shaitan's attack and a difference in the nafs attack. Always understand that Shaitan does not waste its time. Shaitan would come, it will attack you with one temptation and would then leave you. If you go for that temptation, good enough, otherwise it will come and attack you from another temptation. But what Shaitan does very effectively is will come, will implant a thought in your mind and will leave. And that's the thought that your nafs will catch on to, and then it will start working up on that. You see something in the mall, and then you're like stuck on that, and then your nafs starts working on it, and then, it ends up somewhere else. Shaitan will come and always implant a thought. Your nafs is the one that then persistently gets you to act on it. There are two things. One is waswasa, and the other is the attack of Shaitan, right? How do you differentiate between waswasa-e-shaytani and waswasa-e-nafsani? Waswasa, like the thoughts or the provocations of Shaitan versus the provocations of nafs. The easiest way to differentiate is that provocation of nafs is consistent. It's like keeps on coming back. Your mind keeps on going to it, right? Whereas Shaitan will come once. Now, with Shaitan attack once, you say, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah, Shaitan would go away. Nafs does not go away with A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, bismillahir rahmanir rahim. And that's where we fail, because we try to treat nafs with A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, bismillahir rahmanir rahim, or la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Yes, that is effective because that's part of the dua, but the alternate to do that is to, if the nafs is asking you to do something, start going and doing something exact opposite of that. Start putting mujahada on yourself. A lot of people, they had put a penalty system on themselves, that if I end up doing this, I would give in charity this much. And now when you actually act out on that, the other thing that nafs does not like is spending, right? So they say, yeah, I'm better off not doing it. And adhering to that thing. So that's, do not treat nafs with just auzu billah. Treatment of nafs is by putting it into an hardship which it does not like, right? Another thing is that how do I, if I am being tempted by something, how do I gauge that should I do that or not? There are 3 criteria that you should gauge that thought of yours with, to know that now that this thought is coming to me over and over again, is this, because nafs, as I said, is very good at argumentation as well. It can justify why you should do wrong, and it can give you 110 reasons for it as well. One of the reasons is abhi kar lo, uske baad tawbah kar lenge, So that's also one of the reasons that it gives. But 3 things can help in that, in evaluating or in that decision making, should I do that or not. One is that you think that if that thing is in line with Sharia or not. Is Sharia approving of this action of mine or not? And most of the time you will get the answer whether the Sharia approves of it or it doesn't. However, if it is something which you do not know whether the Sharia approves of or not approves of, maybe you do not have the knowledge of end-to-end Sharia, or there's confusion, then the next thing to do is that, what is this an act which the Salihin do, which the people of Allah do, would they have done this or not, right? And that is what company of good people has a very, very important role, plays a very important role in. I'll share a personal story. When I started this journey, I was a fitness freak, probably competing with what Adnan is right now. And I really enjoyed gymming and working out. And so before I would go to any gym and any kind of environment, because the justification would be, it's for my body, it's theek hai, mahol hai, aisa, but yeah, it's okay. I'm an adult, I can manage myself. Then I started going to Sheikh Sahab and was with him and started listening to him. And then I started feeling that, this has started to grow and come out. So I said, no, let's go back, let's get into the fitness routine. So I joined this gym. But this time around when I went there, all I noticed was that there are a lot of women in very small clothes all around me. And I started feeling uncomfortable. And I wasn't feeling uncomfortable because I wasn't used to that environment. When I was used to gym before, I was elusive to all of that. It didn't matter to me. This time around, it started bothering me, because I started thinking that if Sheikh Sahab saw me in this environment, would he approve of it or not? What would he think? What would he say to me if he saw me in this environment? And the only answer that I could come up was that he would be very, very unhappy. Right? So I just didn't go. Right? And now I can easily say that was the influence of being in a company or having a sheikh that helped me save myself. Didn't allow the nafs to justify that, no, it's just exercise, kya fark padta hai, kya. It wasn't that those women were doing anything to me or I was getting tempted or anything. It's just that being in that environment itself was wrong. It could have led to wrong. It could have left a thought that was wrong. And just knowing that my sheikh would not approve of it has helped me not do it.
If you're not used to hear swearing,
yes.
When you hear swearing all of a sudden, like,
absolutely. I mean, if you are in an environment where there's nobody who swears and you go to an environment where people start swearing, you feel very uncomfortable. You feel very uncomfortable. That's what environment does. So the next thing to do is to see that what would the people, the righteous people, how would they do this? And that's why if you don't think, go and ask them. If you have connected with them, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Ask the people of zikr if you do not know. Ask the people of knowledge. And the third thing, if you do not even have access to that, if you do not have the understanding of Sharia and you still want to understand what is it that I should be doing, is to ask your heart. Remember that the heart never lies. Ask your heart, is this something that I should be doing? And the heart, if it is not dead, would tell you this is not something good to do.
It feels wrong. It's probably
If it feels wrong, it is wrong, right? Another way to look at it is that ask yourself that if I don't do this, would this be a burden on my nafs, right? Is it a heavy thing on my nafs if I'm not doing it? If it is a heavy thing on your nafs, it's a good thing. Put that burden on your nafs. Don't treat your nafs, right? Don't treat your nafs. So these three things are things that help counter that when you are at a stage where you are wanting to be good or trying to be good, but then that thought starts coming and provoking. Evaluating it these three things help overcome that as well. Ziadan, you had a question.
So even when your heart says that it's wrong, you can't stop it. If when you ask your heart, it says that it's wrong, and you still can't stop yourself from doing that.
See, there, yeah, मुझे उसका नाम भूल गया मैथ्स में वो जो three circles होते थे which are over Venn diagrams, yeah. That's like that Venn diagram where you are overlapping things, right? So either you are fully in al-Ammarah or you're fully in al-Lawwama or you're in the overlapping phase of it, right? So if you're in the overlapping phase of it, then that means that one or the other would dominate, right? One thing that really helps push the nafs to be consistent in the state of nafs al-Lawwama, or how do you improve yourself from nafs al-Lawwama, is a mujahida, is the hardship which is called Dhikr. Dhikr and ittiba' sunnat, these two things, following the Sunnah 100%, zahir and batin, externally and internally, and doing zikr. These things really help, really help you improve and curb your nafs. And when you do zikr, because when you do zikr, what zikr does is that it brings nur to your heart that helps strengthen your nafs, ruh. And this strength that your ruh has then helps push more weight on your nafs, so that even now when the nafs is tempting or is tempted to do something, the power of your ruh holds it back. But when the ruh is completely weak, there's nothing to counter the nafs. Zikr gives power to your ruh that helps push the nafs back into its place, right?
Okay, talking about zikr, my point, I have a question basically. You know, we have a lot of even now program for askar and what is zikr, like subhanallah wa bihamdihi, subhanallah. But for example, if I want to do zikr, I will just, I'm talk about myself now, but I will just start doing subhanallah. But how do I make it like effective, not like a ratu hota wo lage mein,
So the zikr, when I say zikr, when I say zikr, it's zikr khafi, it's a zikr that's done in your heart. So this is the zikr that we teach. This is a zikr that is not done with your qalb. Zikr lisan, which is, this is the zikr that is done in your qalb, which is not done with your tongue. Zikr lisan is also zikr, Quran is also zikr, but these are momentary zikr. Like, as you said, that if you're just doing tasbih, maybe you don't even know what you're doing. But there's a zikr that if you do in your heart, that has the potential of, just as you breathe and you're unconsciously breathing, but you are breathing. When you train your heart to do zikr, it comes into the state of zikr where it is doing zikr no matter what you're doing.
Even if you're doing anything, for example, I'm flying and I'm busy in
anything. Absolutely. And that is the zikr which, so it starts with zikr and then it goes into fikr. It starts with zikr and then goes into fikr. Just 1 second, we are running out of. Sorry. No, it's not here. Should have thought of that before. About to. Sorry. Because there are a lot of people online as well. So.
It's for the extra subscription.
Even pay for it.
Charge. नहीं वो बुलाएगी
नीचे ही होता है
गर्ल चार्जर किधर है
Oh, blue वाली light.
हाँ
The band's so interesting. Papa, give me the charger. But no, the English talk is funner than the other talk. You crack more jokes.
उसको मतलब से करीब कर लें
फिलहाल टेढ़ी हुई इसमें वो भी हुआ है टेढ़ा बन गई
मैं इसको आगे काफ़ी जगह
अच्छा Alhamdulillah okay it's not charging it's charging okay so where was I was saying that it starts with Dhikr and goes into Fikr. What is Fikr? Fikr means that when you start reflecting on things related to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For example, when you start reflecting into the sifat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? And you see that how, what does it mean for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be Rahman? What does it mean for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be Rahim? What does it mean for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be Hayyul, Qayyum? What does it mean for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be to Qadir? All the different sifat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then the inamat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that what blessings Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given to me. He has given me sight, has given me perfect hearing, He's giving me all the things that I spoke about earlier, that I have a good household, I have a good earning, I have a good family, I have healthy children, I've come from a complete family, I don't come from a broken family, I have had good parents, I've had all the different things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had given to us. When we reflect on the sifat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the inamat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when we reflect on the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and these are things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when you read Quran, these are the things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had asked us to reflect upon as well. The creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why would Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mention every now and then that reflect on how, the rain comes down from the sky, how the vegetation come out from the earth, how the moon and the sun are all in their perfect orbits, how the constellations, everything. The reason is for us to reflect on the creation. Everything that Allah has created is for a purpose, and it has great, utility, and even the creation itself is a great manifestation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when we reflect on all of these things, that's when we attain the state where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that, these are the people that when, no matter what they are doing, whether they are sitting, standing, lying down on their sides, they are constantly in remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they reflect on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they say, وَيَتَفَكَّرُونَ فِي خَلْقِ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ رَبَّنَا مَا خَلَقْتَ هَذَا بَاطِلًا سُبْحَانَكَ وَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ. That, Ya Allah, you have not created any of this without a purpose, so Ya Allah, forgive us. And then, they are lying down, sitting, standing, they're always in zikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, when we do all of this, we achieve the ultimate state of nafs, which is called nafs Mutmainna. This is the nafs which is now pleased with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is radi with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is a nafs which is completely subdued to the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What does it mean that it is radi with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it is pleased with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? That there is no I now. It is not in conflict with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants. It does not reflect to say, well, I wanted to do this, but somebody else wanted me to do that. It just wants to do what Allah wants to get done from it. Rather, it waits that what next can I do for my Rabb. That is nafs Mutmainna, right? And that's a nafs. The biggest sign of that nafs is that there is ittiba sunnat in it. Because keep in mind that there are many paths that lead to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You can start your journey to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from any one of these paths. But all of these paths come and merge at Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And through Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the path to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the ummah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Nobody can say that I can surpass Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and go to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala direct. That's just not how it's meant to be. All the paths lead to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and hence if in our lives the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is not there, then the path to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would always be missing. The journey may be there, but the actual ride up to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cannot happen till the sunnah is in our lives. And the sunnah in our lives is not just about beard. It's not just about beard. It's a complete package. It's how we are in our behavior, how we are in our conduct with people, how we are with our families, how we are with our kids, how we are with our parents, how we are with our neighbors, how we are in our appearances and in our from within. It's all, the more we are closer to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the better this journey towards Allah, and the easier it is to know that my nafs is, because what you have done in becoming 100% compliant to Sunnah is that you have let go of yourself and now you have taken over somebody else. You are no longer you. You are now a reflection of Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Do you see how the nafs has been tamed in that process? The I is gone. You are now not a reflection of you, but rather a reflection of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And that is what helps kill that I and for it to become nafs Mutmainna. Right? This is the stage where there's a term that's used that makruhat-e-sharia becomes makruhat-e-tabiyya. Any translation? Means that the things which are disliked by the Sharia, makruhat-e-sharia, the things which are disliked by the Sharia, or which are not allowed in the Sharia, and not that they are not permissible, they are like disliked in Sharia. They become disliked by ourselves. हमारी तबीयत ही नहीं चाहती हो करने की. We don't want to do that. They become makruhat-e-tabiyya. Makruhat-e-sharia becomes makruhat-e-tabiyya, right? And that is when you feel content when you do things which are in line with Sharia. Now, at the stage when you are at nafs Mutmainna, you are already at a very good stage. But guess what? There are stages, hierarchy within that as well. Right?
Sky is the limit.
Truly. Or maybe not even that. At the first stage of nafs Mutmainna, it's good to know, because so that Shaytan, once we attain that stage, inshallah, the Shaytan should not come and say, oh, still the same. At the first stage of nafs Mutmainna, you still, the thought of doing wrong may still come to you. The thought of doing wrong may still come to you. And you may even be tempted to do that wrong as well. The temptation to do that wrong would still be there as well. But in al-Lawwama, you would slip in. You would go and do it. Here, you will not do it. You would have reached the stage where you would have, the thought would have come, the temptation would have been there, but you would have checked yourself and you would have not done it. Right? You would walk out of the masjid, you see something, now you're not going to get locked. You want to get locked, not this page, another page I'll give you. You want to get locked, but you would say, no, I'm not doing it. You would keep your gaze in check. So the thought has come, the temptation is there, but you haven't given into it. You don't give into it. That's the first stage of nafs Mutmainna. Because now when you are not acting on it, it's actually more reward for you. Because now what you're doing is that you're becoming a mujahid. Right? Now you're fighting. Now you are a mujahid, and that is why Rasulullah said that the best of the mujahid is the one who fights with his nafs. He's the best warrior. The biggest jihad is to do jihad with one's nafs. That's not that you are fighting with your nafs and at times he gets over and at times you get. And the temptation is there, the thought is there, but you're not giving in into it. Right? This is the status, this is the station of a mujahid. The station above that is that the thought of wrong would come, khayal aayega, but the temptation would not be there. Have you guys heard the name of a medicine that's given to those who are borderline diabetic or trying to lose weight? It's called Ozempic. One thing that Ozempic does is that those who take it, they say that, ab khane ka dil hi nahi chahta. Khana samne pada bhi ho na, like if the food is even there, I'm not tempted to eat. It just takes the temptation away from eating. It doesn't, you're hungry, you think, oh, it's good food, but you're not tempted to eat it. It takes that temptation away. So this zikr is the Ozempic, basically. That's the easiest example that I can give. It takes that temptation away. Now, a lot of people who do the first zikr kalbi, right, on Latifa Kal, if they are properly doing it, one of the feedbacks they come and give you is that, I don't feel the temptation to do it. So much so that people would come and I don't feel tempted to go to my wife anymore. Right? It's just that desire just completely goes away. A lot of people who are in the habit of self-indulgence, the best cure for that is this zikr. It just takes away that it's just not tempted to do it anymore. So that's what happened. That's the next station, that you still, because thoughts would come, and thoughts come, but the temptation to pursue that thought isn't there. This is the stage where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had said about his awliya that inna ibadi laysa laka alayhim sultan, that these are my people where Shaytan cannot come and overcome them. Right? He would leave the thought, but it would just say another thought. There's no nafs that is now provoking that go after it, go after it, go after it. And then there's another point as well, but that's a very high point where that's the platinum package. That's actually the maqam of Anbiya alayhi salam, where you're masoom, where there's no thought, there's no temptation. Right? The closer you are to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the elevated your ruh, the more in control you are of your nafs. Jitna qurb hota hai, utna जो है वो अल्लाह सुब्हानहू तआला का बंदे को अपने ऊपर काबू होता है. जितना अल्लाह का कुर्ब उतना अपने ऊपर काबू. The more we will follow the Shariat, the more we will bring the Sunnah in our lives, the more we will do the zikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the easier it is to bring our nafs from nafs al-Ammarah to nafs al-Mutmainna. The path is very simple. The path is very simple. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually wants us to have a purified, a good living. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not want from us that we should have, there's no reason to give us a life which is full of filth, which is a life full of disgust, a life which is full of I. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that مَا يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ لِيَجْعَلَ عَلَيْكُم مِّنْ حَرَجٍ, that Allah does not want, Allah does not like to impose problem on you, right? وَلَكِنْ يُرِيدُ لِيُطَهِّرَكُمْ, but rather He wants to clean you, He wants you to be cleansed, right? وَلِيُتِمَّ نِعْمَتَهُ عَلَيْكُمْ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَشْكُرُونَ, and He wants to give you with His favors, to fulfill His favors upon you so that you may be grateful. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually wants that from us. He doesn't want to put extra thing, but the thing is that from us we need to come out this life of heedlessness into the life of remembrance. As long as we are heedless of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we will be imprisoned by our own nafs. will be imprisoned by our own nafs.
Can you repeat this last thing?
We need to ग़फ़लत की ज़िंदगी नहीं गुजारनी. जितना गाफिल रहेंगे उतना कैद रहेंगे, और जितना अल्लाह की याद में रहेंगे उतना हम परवाज़ करेंगे. जुनैद बगदादी रहमुल्लाह, उनके पास एक परिंदा था. बचपन से उन्होंने उस परिंदे को पाला. स्विच टू उर्दू सडनली, चलेंगे उर्दू में सुना देता हूँ. बचपन से उन्होंने उसको परिंदे के बचपन से उन्होंने उसको पाला. And then one day, he was very attached to it. One day, he let it go. So somebody asked him that, Sheikh, why did you let him go? He was so close to you. He said, the bird said something to me. He said, क्या कहा? उसने कहा कि जुनैद, एक बात, अगर तुम मुझे आज़ाद कर दो तो मैं तुम्हें एक सबक सिखाऊंगा. उसने कहा, अच्छा चलो, वो सीख लेते, सबक क्या होगा. तो उसने उनको आज़ाद कर दिया. उन्होंने क्या सबक है? उन्होंने कहा, सबक ये है कि जब कोई गाफिल होता है तो वो कैद में चला जाता है. मैं गाफिल थी, इसलिए तुमने मुझे कैद कर लिया, और तुम गाफिल होगे तो तुम्हारी नफ्स तुम्हें कैद कर ले. तो अगर आज़ाद रहना चाहते हो तो गफलत से निकल के याद की ज़िंदगी गुजारना शुरू कर, ज़िक्र और फ़िक्र की ज़िंदगी गुजारना शुरू कर. दैट्स द की. एंड द थिंग दैट लीड्स टू ज़िक्र एंड फ़िक्र, जो एक चीज़ जो स्टेपिंग पॉइंट होता है, डू नॉट अंडरमाइन दिस लफ्ज़ लव्वामा. ये जो अल्लाह के सामने गुनाह करने के बाद रोना है, अल्लाह के सामने गुनाह करने के बाद मलामत करना है, अपने आप को अल्लाह से माफ़ी मांगना है, अपने गुनाह का एतराफ़ करना है, ये अल्लाह सुब्हान ताला को बहुत पसंद है. अल्लाह सुब्हान ताला really appreciates this. I'll tell you one last, too long, one last story and then I finish inshallah. There was a guy, he was an alcoholic, really living in catching. Umar can give you water. Living a life of, whatever he wants, whenever he wants. बिल्कुल अयाशी की ज़िंदगी. Fasik, fajir, sharabi, kababi, all the titles that you can give. That was the kind of life that he was living. When he passed away, his wife wanted that now he should be shrouded and should be, इसका जनाजा हो, इसको दफन किया जाए. But everybody in that village refused to attend his funeral. They said कि हम इसका जनाजा नहीं पढ़ सकते. They said कि he was such a bad person, the life he led, every wrong that you could think of, he would do that wrong. There's no point reading his janaza, just go and bury him. And they even refused to go help bury him. And of course, his wife had to bury him. So she said that, as it happens, they even refused to give him space in the village graveyard. They said, we don't want him buried, go bury him somewhere else. So the wife, somehow managed, paid somebody to get the body, took them out of the city, and they were about to bury him there. In that town, there was also a big wali of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He had lied for his kailula, and in his dream he was ordered, then go pray janazah of a friend of ours. So he found out that who is it that has passed away, and everybody said, nobody important. It was that actually the person, that so-and-so person has passed away. But of course, you would not be wanting to pray for him. You shouldn't be bothered. He said, no, I must find out, is there anybody else who has passed away? No, that's the only person who has passed away. Where is his body? The wife has taken it out. So he said, no, bring that body back and let everybody know that I am leading that janazah. So when people found out that wali of Allah is praying that janazah, everybody gathered, and then his janazah was done. He was, given proper ghusl janazah, and he was buried properly. So after that, people started asking his wife that, what was it that person was used to do that made Allah order his friend to come and pray his janazah? क्या ऐसा अमल था कि वली अल्लाह को हुक्म हुआ कि इसका जनाजा पढ़ाओ? So his wife said, there is nothing, he was a sharabi kababi, there was nothing, there was no good about him. He said, नहीं कुछ तो होगा, कुछ नहीं होगा. So out of a lot of thinking, his wife said that, one thing that I can think of was that in the morning when his hangover would end and when he would come back into his senses, he would, on his bed, he would say to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that, Ya Allah, I am truly a horrible person. Ya Allah, when I die, I do not know in which depth of Jahannam you're going to throw me in. Ya Allah, I have done no good to you. But Ya Allah, I'm still your abd. If you have it, just forgive me.
I'm still your
Abd. I'm still, yeah, still your slave. So, बस मुझे अगर हो सके तो मुझे माफ फरमा दी. And then he would go back to what he was used to do. But once he was over that, he, with all his sincerity, would seek forgiveness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This process of seeking forgiveness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, never undermine that. Do not think that I have done so much wrong that there is no going back. There is always, 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 till our very last breath, room to go back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All that requires is just a sincere, heartfelt sorry. And it doesn't even need to come out from our tongue. It is just needs to be within us. From in the depths of our heart, Ya Allah, I am sorry. That's it. That's all that it takes. And Allah will forgive. So never undermine that. Never let your nafs or shaitan tell you that you are too bad a person because you do so wrong. Know that Allah is bigger, more loving, more caring, more rahim, more kareem. You say sorry to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you show regret and remorse, and Allah will appreciate that. And the conversion from nafs al-Lawwama to nafs al-Mutma'innah happens on the basis of that remorse. Because what Shaytan wants to take away by making you feel that you are too bad a person is to take that remorse away from you. If that remorse is gone, you are slipping from nafs al-Lawwama to nafs al-Ammarah. You don't want that remorse to go away. You want that remorse to be there. Start worrying if that remorse is going away. Having said that, nafs is khabeeth. Nafs will say, "Ya dekh, tu to rota bhi hai. Koi baat nahi, chal phir ro leenge." Right? So don't let nafs get you tempted into just saying that, okay, I'll cry one more time and it will all be good. Right? Sincere tawbah. Sincere tawbah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us tawfiq to do that sincere tawbah. Apologies for a very long session. I don't know if I'm very sincere in my apologies when I say that, but I am. I really don't intend. I don't plan to make it this long, but it just happens to be that. Right? Jazakumullah khair. I'm open to take any questions if anyone has any. Jazakumullah khair. Wa akhiru dawana alhamdulillah rabbil alamin.